welcome to the Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting of April 11th, 2022. Attendance has been taken, and I will proceed with the election of chair and vice chair. So before we begin, I would like to recognize that because this meeting is being held electronically and there is no mechanism for a secret ballot, and so any votes will be held by the raising of hands in open session. And if there's a tie, the selection will be done so by lot. So with that all said, do I have any nominations for chair?
Prior.
Yes.
Seeing as how our last meeting was scheduled 2 years ago, can you just identify who's members of the committee here today? Because I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure.
Yes.
Okay, so on my list I have here, and I'm sorry I don't have the names to faces memorized either. But so I have Mayor Bailey, I have Councillor Meller, I have member Drew Baird, I have member Ruth Ann Brofton, sorry if I pronounced that wrong. I have member Jim Harder, Lee Foster, Martin Van Berkel, and Patrick Newstead. So those are our voting members.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. So with all that said, do I have any nominations for chair? Leona? You just on mute, Leona. Still on mute, sorry. Should have a button at the bottom left. Oh, there you go. Okay. Oh, but I still can't hear you, unfortunately. You know what you could use? We can utilize the chat option. So it should be, if you go into our participants, you know what? Where's the chat? Hey, Gary, do you know where the chat feature is? I should come up on the bottom for me here. Lots of technical issues today, I guess. Leona, you could try and email me if that would work. So my email is my first name and it's period my last name. You could see Briar Allison on my full name at brant.ca. Okay, so I guess we're just gonna hold on and hope for an email to be received. Sheena, go ahead.
I was just clicking to see if I could find the box while we're waiting, but does somebody else want to proceed with the nomination while we're waiting for Lee's email?
Seeing none. Okay, I got an email from Martin.
I'll move Drew Baird.
Okay. Sorry, Lee, you're still muted. Unfortunately, I can't hear you. Okay, so Drew, do you accept the nomination?
Sorry, yes, I'll accept.
Okay.
And I'll ask Lee to be a chair as well.
Okay. Vice chair?
Yeah, vice chair, yes.
Okay. Do I just have any other nominations for chair? Seeing none, Andrew, you accepted the nomination. And Drew, you put forward Lee as a vice chair. Lee, do you accept the nomination? Okay. Any other calls for vice chair? Seeing none, if I could have a motion to close nominations for both. So I just need a mover and a seconder for that.
I'll move it.
Thank you, Drew. Seconder.
I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Okay, so with that said, I am going to pass the meeting over to Chairman Baird now.
Approval of agenda. Can I have except for approval of agenda?
Hold on. Can I just make a change before we approve the agenda? The attachments for 11.2 came through incorrectly, so I'm going to share my screen when we get to that point.
Okay. Can I have the approval of the agenda now, please? Declaration.
I was going
Sorry?
to say, I see Patrick has his electronic hand raised there. I don't know if he's moving it, Patrick, or you got a question, but if Patrick's moving, I will second it.
Okay. Declaration of pecuniary interests. Are there any? Delegations, petitions, presentations. Adoption of the minutes from the previous meetings. Do I have approval of that, please? Okay. This is arising from the minutes. New business, vehicle hire by law consultation. G. Bergeron.
Yes, that's me. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Greg Bergeron. I am the manager of bylaw enforcement with the County of Brant. Thank you for letting me speak today. I just wanted to let the committee know that our vehicle for hire bylaw, it's known as the taxi bylaw currently, is currently being replaced by what's called a vehicle for hire bylaw. It's a more comprehensive bylaw that will include limousines, vehicles for hire like the Ubers and the Lyfts, as well as taxis. Part of this process requires us to consult with the advisory committee, and that's what we're doing today. And I have some items that are listed on the agenda. We are in the final stages of enacting this new vehicle for hire bylaw. We did have a meeting that went to the Administration and Operations Committee in December of 2021. It was followed by a commenting period for a 45-day commenting period where we accepted comments from the general public. So part of that meeting in December, there was some direction from committee and council that staff consider adding a new fee for private network companies, the Ubers and the Lyfts of the world, to go towards accessible services. You will see in the last agenda item that I have under 8.1, there is a link there to a comprehensive report, a survey, the current bylaw and a draft bylaw for the committee to review. I would strongly encourage you to go and have a look if you have the opportunity to review those documents. So that's basically the background of why I'm here today to speak to you. One of the things that came up, and I'm just moving to item number 1 now on the agenda. One of the items that came up during the public consultation was there any caveat or requirements in the proposed bylaw to include some accessibility training? I believe that this is already covered under the AODA, not specifically for taxi companies, but just generally speaking for businesses. However, it was identified in the public consultation and commenting period that, this may be something that we want to include in our bylaw. I've looked at some other bylaws and they basically read pretty much the same. There is some sensitivity training. There's also some recognized training that they've included in the wording in the bylaw. So I basically want to put that to the Accessibility Advisory Committee for the County of Brant, if that's something that they want to consider to have in our bylaw, which essentially would make it a requirement for people that are providing or companies that are providing accessible rides would be required to obtain this training. It would be mandated through our bylaw. Just food for thought. Moving on to the second agenda item. Does anybody have any questions before I move on to the second item?
Greg, Mr. Chair, I got a question for him. If that's okay. Greg, what do you mean it's already in the AOD for accessibility training? What are you saying, that the AODA says that Uber and Lyft have to have the accessibility trained? I'm not sure what you mean by it. It's already in the AODA.
Just throw through you, Mr. Chair. It's very generic. The language is very generic in the AODA. It doesn't specifically speak to that, but it does speak to having some requirements around customer service and accessibility. So I believe that it's already incumbent on the businesses to make sure that they have some of these requirements. That's just my reading of it, but that's my understanding under the AODA. There's an obligation for businesses to comply.
Okay.
It sounds very vague in its expression. I'm sitting here listening to you, and I don't really know what you mean by that. Like, do they need to have requirements for accessibility? Do they not? Do they need the training? Do they not? I don't think you can just lay it out there and say, well, I guess they'll do it.
Correct. Yes. No, I understand that. And that may be the right mechanism is to include it in a bylaw, and that's why I wanted to bring it up today. And that will, ensure that it is, that they do have the required training. I just don't know if that's what the committee is seeking. I would imagine that that's most likely the direction they want to go. But I wanted to certainly put it out there because I do see some model bylaws in the province where some have the training requirements and other municipalities don't.
Is there any input into number of taxis allowed and that sort of outlook?
Yes, that's correct. So I'm just moving on right now to that'll be the next item that's on the agenda. Have a little discussion on that. I'm not seeking any answers today. I'm just basically putting some information out there for the committee to consider. And I will provide a date for to have some comments back from the committee so that we can move that forward in a future report to the committee and council. Yes, Sheena?
Through the chair to Greg. That's what I was going to ask, was for a due date. You are correct in saying the AODA does say that businesses are responsible for providing the training. However, they are not our businesses, so we cannot govern who's getting trained. So if it is into the bylaw, then I personally think that would benefit us, ensuring that it does get done. Would that require a motion from our committee to you, or would we just provide it in a comment?
My thought, Sheena, is that it would most likely just be required in a comment. I mean, if you want to pass a motion and formalize the process, we can certainly do that. But, I would certainly bring any of the recommendations from the committee forward. And, particularly this one here, it makes sense to me. I think we have a common goal and everybody wants to ensure that, that there is some training.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Moving on to agenda item number 2. So the second item is proportion of on-demand accessible taxis. This particular section is included in the AODA. It basically indicates that we need to consult with the AAC. I'll just give you some high-level statistics as to where we are. Currently in our taxi bylaw, we require the 5th cab. So if you have 4 cabs, you're not required to have an accessible vehicle. As soon as you have the 5th one, it requires it to be accessible. So with that number, we're looking at about a 20% rate. I just spoke to Brantford earlier today. They have 8 out of 94 of their cabs, and their bylaw requires 1 for every 18. The city of Ottawa requires about 10 to 15%. It depends on the size of your taxi company and the amount of taxis that you have. So it seems that our current ratio is in line with some of the municipalities that we've looked into. 20% seems to be pretty good, but we certainly want to hear from the committee in that regard as well. I will caution that the industry certainly doesn't look the same as it did when we conducted a survey in 2020. There's been some increased demands. There were some changes in 2020 or 2019, I'm not too sure of the exact date, but there were some changes to the Insurance Act, and the insurance rates were greatly increased for the taxi industry. And currently the price of fuel is having an impact on the taxi companies. So that's kind of the current landscape. And you know, they're still feeling the residual effects of the pandemic. But you know, this would be another item that we would like to see comment from the committee. Yes, Sheena?
In the changes to the bylaw, is the office in the county requirement, is that being removed? So will that in turn increase how many accessible taxis are available overall?
So in its current format, I'm sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, in its current format, the bylaw has removed that stipulation. So right now, on the proposed regulations, a taxi office would only fall under zoning. So we just have to make sure that it complies with the zoning bylaw. We have removed it from the vehicle for hire bylaw. So there's no correlation that you have to have an office in the county of Brant in order to operate a taxi business. So that's been removed. So there is a possibility that you know, there other organizations will obtain a license in the county of Brant. So it could increase the complement of accessible vehicles.
So does that mean somebody could call Brant Taxi for an accessible vehicle and get a ride from Paris to Brantford?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to clarify, that's currently still permitted, right? Right now, the way our bylaw is if you're licensed on one end of the trip, then the ride is okay, as long as, you know, an outside company that's not licensed by the county is doing a county to county ride per se.
Okay.
The proposed model bylaw is not planning to make any changes in that regard, subject to committee and council, of course.
Is there a requirement to have an accessible cab on duty 24 hours a day?
I will have to verify that. I know that they are required to provide service 24/7. I am not 100% sure if it requires an accessible vehicle 24/7. I can certainly circle back to the committee on that for sure.
It'd be more fair that way, I would say.
No, understood. Understood. Off the top of my head, I'm not certain. I don't believe that it does cover that. But I take your comment.
I got a question actually, Drew, to members of the committee. In regards to this one that Greg's talking about, what percentage of cabs would we like as accessible? My question, and I don't know, and maybe Sheena can chime in too. Like, do a lot of people that need special transportation, do they rely on the taxis, or are they using the RE ride? And I'll say right now, I know the E-ride doesn't work. Obviously, we know it has certain hours. So I'm just wondering how often people with accessible requirements rely on the taxi.
I would say it's a mix of both, because like Brant Transit isn't on demand, come and get you like a taxi would. It's a people service, and like you said, it has hours of operation. But I do know in the past, overnight, there has been some concerns with accessible taxis being available.
Okay. Like overnight, over the night hours, that's what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or like,
Yeah. Same as a regular taxi.
right. Yeah. But I would say like people are using Brant Transit and taxi. Like it hasn't taken away from people still needing that use or that extra service.
And I'm just, I don't know. So there, it sounds like there are some issues periodically with being able to get an accessible vehicle from the taxi company. So.
Right. The worst one is at night, there's no duty, because people who have disabilities, they like to go out too, and they like to be out beyond 7:30 sometimes, and it's discriminatory not to allow that or make preparation for that.
Thank you for those comments. We appreciate it. Are we okay? Sorry, go ahead, Julie.
Sorry, through the chair, I would like to just notice that currently there's only 8 taxis licensed in the county and 4 for each company. So the requirement for the 5th taxi to actually be accessible really hasn't come into effect, because neither one of them have 5 taxis on their fleet. With that being said, both companies are still offering accessible rides with accessible vehicles, but the requirement wouldn't actually apply to them unless they get a 5th vehicle. Okay.
Thank you, Julie.
I know I've wanted to get accessible cabs to go somewhere on the weekend, but they only work to a certain hour, so I can't. I've got to time my visit to somebody's house to get home by 9, because they only run till 9 or 6, whatever the hours are. We wanted to go visit friends on the weekends by cab, but we can't because they don't work after 6.
Sorry, so cabs are not working until after 6, or is it only accessible cabs? Because the cabs right now are...
Accessible cabs are only working until 6.
Oh, really? We weren't aware of that. We weren't aware that.
Because we wanted to go visit some friends, but we couldn't, because, and then, well, it used to be 9, but even 9's kind of...
What's the transit service?
The transit service was until 9, but why can't they work longer on the weekends?
Mm-hmm. I understand what you're saying, and that's a separate issue, because we're consulting right now for the vehicles for hire, but I think that question is probably a part of a larger initiative that, you know, Sheena and probably council would have to be involved in, because I think it would look at probably expansion of hours for the transit system, right? I think that's what you're getting at.
Yeah, just that they have a certain accommodation time, and it's not. I think it's right.
I think he's meaning the taxis, Greg, though, not specifically Brant Transit. He said The accessible taxis are only available till 6.
Oh, I misunderstood. I thought
Don't
somebody
put
had
that
jumped.
on us.
No, I thought somebody had jumped in and said something that it was related to Brant Transit. Am I
I
mistaken?
also heard that, Greg, so.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm
it's
just
till
wondering.
9 during the week.
Okay,
That's what
Yeah,
he was
thanks
saying.
for clarifying that. Yeah, because I was wondering too. So
okay. I'm not sure what happened there, but I apologize if there's any confusion.
That's
I
fine.
misunderstood it.
well, just getting back to it may be great, and as Jim Harder mentioned too, maybe that's something we could look at then. Is because as Julie says, you know, if they only got the 4, they technically on paper right now the bylaw says they don't have to have any. Maybe we say the first one has to be accessible, and then we go from there. And at the same time, look, maybe you can look at availability, right? Like we know we like to have them available 24/7. Maybe we always have the accessible one 24/7 or something like that. I don't know if you know we can answer that today, but maybe it's something you can look at too, because it sounds like it would it would really help them.
Okay. Thank you. Moving on to the third agenda item, it's the fee per ride. Going back to what I had mentioned earlier in the minutes from the administration and operations meeting, there was some direction from the committee and council to consider adding a fee to private network companies to go towards accessible service. So the way things work right now in most of the province is that private vehicles for hire generally will require a fee per ride, just to kind of offset some of the costs for licensing. Part of the industry wants a fair level playing field between the transport network companies and the taxi industry. So this is why this fee per ride is incorporated in the bylaw. It's to essentially trying to level the playing field. So right now we had proposed an 8 cent per ride fee. Now this was initially intended, I believe, to be a licensing fee. And then we've seen in other municipalities where they have 2 fees. They have the licensing fee, and then they also have the accessibility transportation fee, where they basically incorporate some initiatives through a fund. And some of these initiatives can vary from municipality to municipality. Some of these funds that are garnered from this fee per ride can go to the advisory accessibility committees. Some of them provide subsidies for van conversions up to X amount of dollars per year. I think Waterloo is in the $80,000 or $40,000 range to do some of those changes. There are rider subsidies, there are industry subsidies, just a number of initiatives that can be considered. The problem that we have with this fund right now is that it's an unknown quantity for us. We can say 8 cents, we can say 11 cents, we can say 20 cents. We just don't know what that effect will be to provide funds to the accessible community. But I certainly wanted to put that question out there for the committee to determine if they want to see a fee. I would imagine they most likely like to see a fee for accessibility initiatives. Right now, as I've mentioned, we're at 8 cents for a licensing fee, and subject to the committee's direction, we are looking for some input on having a fee per ride for accessibility initiatives or an accessibility fund. Again, it doesn't have to be today. Return comments are 2 weeks from today, but certainly something I wanted to put on your radar for consideration.
So that's an additional tax, so to speak. Is that correct?
It's basically an additional fee per ride. The argument can be made that the customer may be paying for that, and putting those initiatives forward. So it's not really a tax on the accessible. It's a tax on, not necessarily a tax, but it is an extra fee that they would have to pay to the municipality.
Yeah, it's a dedicated fee.
Correct.
And just my thoughts. 8 cents, I don't think that's going to make or break a trip. So, but I do want to hear what the committee says, and I don't want to say too much because that was me that referred it back to this committee for input, and for you, Greg, to bring it back forward to council. So I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts on this.
Yeah, just to give you an idea, like the larger municipalities certainly have a benefit when it comes to, having an increase in revenue, and it certainly helps with accessibility initiatives for sure. We just don't have the statistical information from the transport network companies to provide any type of number, because we have no idea what that fund is going to look like, to be honest with you.
Well, I think often these people that are taking these rides are because they're not very rich people, so that government has a way of taxing you through the back door. And I don't think there should be an additional fee charged to the passenger. There's money out there that goes to, as we say, different places, and that money could be used. Why you're charging the people that are poor that wage rate or income rate, I don't know, it doesn't seem right.
No, I understand what you're saying. And normally that would just be a fee for the county, right? So it would be up to the transportation network company to decide, how they want to absorb that cost. They can absorb it themselves, or they can pass it on to the customer, right? And that's their business decision. But if you're looking at 8 cents per ride or 20 cents per ride, it's not a huge amount of money. But when you add it up, it certainly can have an impact to provide, a fund for the accessibility community, and that's essentially, how we're looking at, creating some additional revenue for some initiatives. But I understand your comment. Yes.
I just got some digital comments that I wanted to share.
Okay.
And not in particular to this fee, but what about having the third taxi in the fleet as the accessible vehicle, and then every fifth after that, possibly to change the ratio? And then the suggestion of having accessible taxi hours from 6 a.m. to 12 a.m. So 6 in the morning to midnight seems reasonable. And then if the I think if the taxi company has one accessible vehicle in their fleet, that's reasonable. What's the comment?
That's one comment, or is that?
We have accessible taxi hours 6 a.m. to 12 a.m. is quite reasonable. I think if the taxi has one accessible vehicle in their fleet. That's the comment.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions before we wrap up? So I'm going to, again, direct the committee to this link, which is item 8.1.4. Please review it. There are a couple of questions in the survey, questions 3A and 3B, that speak specifically to the ability to book an accessible taxi and an accessible transport network company. There's some statistical information there. If you want to review that, I think there is some benefit to having a look at that document. And with that, I won't take any more of your time. I will ask for comments. If we can appoint somebody to provide written comments to me or to Julie, that would be wonderful, and we can share that information as to where the comments need to go. Who's the point person, Sheena, that I should initiate contact with?
If committee members could send comments to Keely, Keely could combine them and then send to you.
Okay.
Wonderful. Thanks for your time, everyone. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. Park plans, Woodley Linear Park. Who are we reporting that?
Kathy, are you here?
Yes, I am. I had some technical difficulties, so I am on my phone.
Oh, I can share my screen if we want to bring up the parks. I'll bring up Woodsley first. Then
Thanks,
as an
Sheena.
attachment.
Perfect.
Is that, can we see that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like we can. That's excellent. Okay. For those who aren't familiar with where this is located, maybe we should start with that, Sheena. So this is in the new subdivision in the north end of town. It's located between Woodsley Ave and Hartley Ave, which is the new street where we have a park to the east of this location. So it's a very small strip of land. As you can see, it's highlighted in the green color there. It's about 72 feet wide or 22 meters. So we had to be quite creative to create this little linear park there. Does everybody understand where that is? Any questions?
No.
Oh. All right, flip back to the other one, Tina. So as you can see, this park is quite narrow, and it's really going to be a thoroughfare park that we've added some little highlighted sections and some opportunities for people to rest and gather and a little bit of recreation, but very minor amount in this plan. We have had, we did do some public consultation through Engage Brand earlier this year, or last year, I guess it was now. We didn't really receive any comments from the public, which is kind of unusual, but it is what it is. So that's where we're at with that. And this plan basically will have on the south side of the plan, or the left-hand side, we'll have a park entry feature, which will just be more like an archway with some columns. And then you'll come into the space and there's some gardens that we have there that you'll meander through. And then we have a couple of benches and areas there as well that you'll be able to see and experience some of the elements within the gardens. And hopefully people will, have a calm kind of place to relax if they're out for a walk and stop and contemplate a little bit and enjoy that area. And then you will meander a little bit further down the pathway. And in the middle there, we have what's seen on the bottom of your screen is a swinging bench. That will have concrete under that, so it could be, I guess, a transferable space if you wanted to transfer into that swinging bench. And just a little opportunity again to stop and have a little bit of a swing on the way. And then further down in the largest pod area, we actually have what's seen on the bottom of your screen, this rock climbing feature. There'll be a little opportunity for kids to do a little climbing, and we've actually added a second feature to that, which is kind of like a tunnel with like a ladybug and a couple, just like a sculptural tunnel that people could just sit on or climb on as well, or crawl under. Lots of trees and hardscaping throughout, so it's all paved trails. There's little ribbons of concrete that kind of just highlight different areas or delineate the garden spaces. Then following down the pathway to the right-hand side is the entry feature, which will have a seat wall on the bottom part. And there'll be a little garden in the middle and then a bench on the other side. And then that will come right up to grade at the sidewalk on Hartley Ave. So there are sidewalks on both sides. The one on the Woodsley Ave side has not been built yet. The developer hasn't finished that section of road, but I assume that they will relatively soon this year. Okay, I think I've kind of highlighted that. If anybody has any comments, I'd love to hear them.
Is the parking lot on the street?
Yes, this is just a walk to park. There are
Okay.
no parking spaces per se. There are some street parking allocations along that way. I believe maybe to the east of the park more, because just to the to the south of this Hartley Ave and Woodsley Ave, there is an intersection. So usually there's no parking within
Right.
9 meters of the intersection. And actually the property on the Hartley Ave side, the driveway for that property is at the, like on the side street. So it's a corner lot. So it's a little bit cool. So there would be, there is some accessibility along the street on the eastern part of the street.
How much smooth surface is there for wheelchairs and things of that nature?
Yeah, so we're looking at about, I think it was 2.4 meters wide. To 3 meters, somewhere in that range, depending on exactly where you are within the pathway. And there's a bit bigger open space on the Hartley Ave side where the seat wall is there.
Kathy,
Yes,
just to clarify, so the entire path through the park is paved?
correct. Yes, the whole thing is paved, yeah.
And then on the Woodsley Ave side where the Zen Garden
Yes.
is the intent to be able to walk through there?
No, not really. It's just to stay on the path. It's just an opportunity to bring types of perennials,
Okay.
different scents and colors and textures to those gardens. There's real no walkability in the park. The only real parts that you can get off the pathway are at the swinging bench, and the play pod will have the engineered wood fiber in there.
Okay, thank you.
So is it kind of like more for adults?
It really is, because we do have a park just down the street that's more for active play. This is a passive area. It's just meant to have some gardens and some nice green space for people to have a quiet contemplation, or as they are kind of cutting in between streets, they have a nice streetscape to go through. Okay. No other comments?
Kathy, when was this going to be built? You said part of it was built now, or is it all going to be finished this year?
We're just preparing the tender documents for this construction, so we do anticipate that it will be constructed. The houses are all built there. It's just some of the sidewalks haven't been finished yet on the Woodsley side.
Okay, thanks. And I just want to say I like the meandering pathway. I think that gives it an interesting flair versus just something that went straight through.
Thank you. Yeah, it's something, we really don't have anything else like this anywhere in the county, so it was an opportunity to try some different things here. Okay. I guess if there's no other comments, we can move to the other park. Gina? I'm not sure if everybody is familiar with where this is in Onondaga, but it's basically almost like a town square in the village between Tuscarora Street and Brantford Street. Brantford Street, if you have been to the Onondaga Community Hall, is just around the corner from this park down towards the river. This park was originally a ball diamond for many, many years, probably 40, 50 years ago. I used to play on there when I was a teenager, so it's been there a while. It really has not been used as a ballpark for probably 15 years or more. So we thought it was time to do a park renovation. And we've completely taken the ball diamond out of this. There is an existing playground and an existing sport court, which is on the it would be the west part of the park, but on the lower part where you kind of see a little square there with colors, that's not there, but we're proposing to add that. So there's a small building that was existing there along Center Street, and everything else is just green space that was a ball dime with fences and backstop and everything, which will be removed as part of this project. But we did do a public consultation prior to the pandemic, way back in the fall or winter of 2020, I guess it would have been. And we got some feedback from the community about what they would like to see in the park. And we've tried to incorporate the comments that we got into this design. So this design is really has a lot of historical and cultural connections to the namesake of Onondaga and really what it means. And so throughout this design, you will see features that will be representative of the people of Onondaga as the indigenous people. One of the things that we would like to do is to try to put a main entry. So at the very top left-hand corner, you'll see a little triangular bed there. And that would become the new primary entrance. That's kind of your drive into Onondaga Park and to the village there that you really see that. So I'd like to have a little bit of a feature, maybe a fountain or something like that in that area. Again, these walking paths would be all paved in these loops in this plan. And right now, it is a little bit of a wet area, probably on the more towards the river side. I guess that would be on the south side of the park. So we're trying to stay away completely from the fence line there, but bearing that in mind as we've done the design. Within this, we do have the white pine as the focal feature, which has a historical connotation as well. And we have a nice seating area with like a gazebo kind of pergola. I guess it would be more of a pergola with some seating there at the entry parts. Again, putting a lot of plantings in there. People seem to want gardens and plantings, so we've added a lot of that. A little bit of an oval circular route if you want to do a walk with your dog or with your fellow people from the neighborhood. And then we've added 2 more garden spaces, and those are the other 2 triangular beds that you'll see there. And within those beds, we have some seating areas that are little balls, or there's actually a flattened version. You don't really see it in this photo, but if you go to engagebrant.ca, this one actually is going to get posted maybe today. Jake's working on it for the beginning of the public consultation that has a little bit more detail. We've also added, we did have some feedback from the public about there wasn't a lot of playground equipment that was more for toddlers. So the little brown square that you see there is going to be like a play area for toddlers. And that will be in addition to the existing playground that's there. the playground that was installed there about 4 or 5 years ago. No, and actually, I think it was 2018, about 4 years ago, I guess. So it's pretty relatively new, that playground. We will be looking at changing the entrance a little bit into that area. Right now, it's very close to the street. It does have a chain link fence along that area of the playground area. So we're going to add a little entrance towards the Center Street, as well as on Tuscarora near the playground, or the back of the playground and the sport court area. It doesn't really have a formal entrance there, but we would like to add that so that people from all directions can get into the park a little easier. The sport court that is there is 2 basketball nets, and it's on like a concrete pad. So we just want to refresh that a little bit, add some new equipment, and maybe put like a 4 squares, a little bit more activities for that court rather than just basketball. And then when you swing around to the other side of the park, along the fence line, we will replace all that fencing that's there as well. Add some more plantings, and then when you come back out to Brantford Street at the top, there is actually a kiosk, like a little kiosk where members of the community can put postings and notices up there. So there's an old notice board, and the mailboxes are right there as well. So it'll be a good entry point there to have people coming into the park, because there's already some features in that neighborhood. So anyways, that's our design. I don't know if anybody has any questions. I'd be happy to try to answer them.
You mentioned people walking their dog. Is it big enough for that sort of activity? Because dogs and their walks can overtake a park pretty quickly.
Well, there is quite a nice loop, so I guess it depends on what time people come in and in what area. So you can come in 4 different ways into this park, 5 actually.
Right, but
so,
would they have to be leashed the whole time or something like
yes,
that?
Yeah, they would. A lot of people like to walk their dogs in the evening after work or in the morning. So it isn't a leash-free area. They would have to be on leashes.
Thank you.
Kathy,
Yes.
is there sidewalks coming like on Center Street and Brantford Street?
No, this is a rural area. There are no sidewalks at all. So you can see that we've tried to join up to the road, kind of edge of the road there to get them into the park. It's all just grass kind of right now. Actually, along the Brantford Street side, there's kind of a little bit of a layaway. The business across the road tends to park cars. It's kind of an automotive repair shop. So you can't really see it on this drawing, but there's a little bit of gravel along Brantford Street side between just to the south of Center Street.
Okay. And where it's indicated that there's an accessible parking space.
Yeah, so that's where we were thinking of, in that area there, because it's already got kind of a flat area.
Is the space going to be paved like the trail and then just be at the same grade?
Yeah, the space would be paved along the roadway there, just kind of a lay-by, kind of a parallel situation.
Okay.
And then they would have to kind of come up to that main entrance up kind of along by the street there. We'll try to tuck it in as close as we can to that entrance.
And then right beside where it says accessible parking space, there is a picture of those flat sitting stones. In that image, they appear to all be on the grass. Are they going to be close to the path so that you can access them from the paved trail?
Yeah, they won't be in the grass. They'll be more probably in the planting beds and stuff like that. There might be a couple in the grass. Shouldn't interfere with anything.
Okay, but you can access them from the trail.
Sheena,
Yeah, they'll be basically beside it or near the garden areas.
Okay. Yeah, Jim?
can you turn your volume up a bit? Sometimes I can hear you clearly, other times I can't really hear you.
I think it's an internet thing because
Oh,
my
okay.
volume is at max capacity.
Right. Well, our speaker here is very clear when you're sort of faded into the background.
I guess we would just look for any comments that you have. Like I said, this one is just going up on engagegrant.ca for public comments this week, and it'll be probably for the next 3 or 4 weeks. So if anybody have any comments or questions, we certainly would love to hear from you. Okay.
I think they look good, Kylie.
Great, thanks for letting us know that. Appreciate that. Megan, our landscape designer, had some fun with this one. It's a little bit unique again.
Yeah.
Renovation, right? So. Okay, there's nothing further, and enjoy the rest of your meeting, folks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ellie.
All right, bye-bye.
8-3, Sensitive Santa. Who's presenting that?
So I'm going to speak to Sensitive Santa. So last year we were able to hold Sensitive Santa in person. We had a very successful event with 3 full hours. Unfortunately, in 2020, we were not able to hold an in-person Sensitive Santa event. However, we were able to share on social media some different ways of engaging with Santa. So some virtual meetings, places where kids could send letters to Santa and receive a written response back. So we are hopeful that 2022 will bring another in-person Sensitive Santa event. Does anyone have any questions about the event? It was held at Sun City as it was in previous years. However, we were not able to use the music room or the sensory room as we have in previous years, just for safety. And we did send the craft home so people weren't interacting a lot with each other during the event.
You said there was a good turnout the last time you had it?
Yes, it was a very good turnout. We had a full schedule of kids for the full 3 hours, which is an hour longer than we usually do.
Oh.
And where was it?
It was at Sun City in Paris. So the Deaf, Blind, and Sensory Network.
Oh, okay. All right.
I'm just going to add, just to give context, we scheduled our visits about like every 6 to 8 minutes. So that's how many kids we had in an hour.
Oh.
Because some kids want to see Santa for like 3 seconds or are scared of Santa. And then other kids are like, need a little bit of time to warm up. So they need a full 10 minutes. So it's kind of like, you know who's been a repeat visitor, so they're going to need about 6 minutes, but then someone's first time meeting Santa, they need about 10, and then you cram somebody else in for about 4 minutes. So we roughly had about 30 visits, but plus siblings in addition. So that's how many kids went through.
Are the kids turned away because there's no availability?
We did start a waiting list, and then somebody did have to cancel, so we did get to fill those people. The 3rd hour was put in place this year so that we didn't have to turn anybody away, because Brantford wasn't able to host because they typically, like I typically did it at the mall.
Yeah.
And they were doing, I believe, virtual visits again, or like distant visits. So that's why we added the 3rd hour. We didn't turn anybody away.
Okay. And how do you work that, Shane? Like, yeah, I know you did it at the mall there before. So, I guess you don't ask where the kids come from. You just, if they sign up kind of deal, or how does that work?
Yeah, they contact us. So I know we've had people from out of town, like Ancaster Way, and I've seen our advertising because we are the closest location that's offered this. So I don't typically I haven't limited it to only County of Brant residents or only Brantford residents in the past.
Okay. I don't want to see a county child not get it, because you're doing a bunch from, like you say, Ancaster. But I think I'll leave that up to you guys to.
We would just ask Santa to stay longer.
Okay.
If it got to that point where we had a huge waiting list, we would. I don't want to turn people away.
No, yeah.
Not being able to have it in 2020 was heartbreaking enough.
Okay. Sometimes you don't know if Santa has another appointment. That's the only thing. So.
Mm-hmm.
Get your next Kaylee again, accessibility week.
All right, so for Accessibility Week, this year we're looking at doing again a virtual presence as opposed to an in-person event. For staff, we're looking at getting them to comment and share with us what they do to help make the county accessible, and then that will be shared on social media. If anybody on the committee has any ideas of businesses they would like us to highlight during that week, of say like, this business does a great job at accessibility, we can do that. It's not as formal as our Salute to Brant Awards, like an accessibility award, but even just kind of highlighting like, hey, we think you're doing a good job, just kind of highlighting it. You can send your recommendations to me and I'll compile a list and post them for our weekend, the end of May. So just any kind of business that you're like, hey, I know this one's really great at accessibility. I can get in really easily. I can maneuver around really easily. We just want to highlight those businesses during that week so people know that that's a good place to frequent.
Okay.
What week is it again?
It is the last week in May, the last full week.
Thanks.
So Keely, when do you want your recommendations in by?
I would like those in by at least the second week of May would be the absolute latest date.
So can we say May 13th? Recommendations into Keely?
All right, moving on. Election sites for municipal election in October.
So last month, myself, Sheena, and some clerks went on a tour of all the sites that we'll be using for the municipal election in October and did a check of accessibility. And everyone that we visited has accessibility options that it's easy to get in, to maneuver around. Washroom access is available. So we just wanted to give you an update that we've checked those out for accessibility prior to the event happening.
Add that next month, the clerks will be sending a report to us that have all the sites listed, as well as the accessibility plan. I also want to note that the washrooms aren't necessarily for the voters, they're for the staff. So if anybody working the polls would have access to the washrooms, or if the washrooms were not in like a good accessible order, then they would possibly be recommended to work at another site.
It should be noted too. I think this is we'll be doing online movie too, so that'll be the first.
Yes.
If you can't get there, you got an option.
So the online, and then also advanced voting at the Burford office.
Okay. Well, we've always done advanced.
And previous I don't believe it was the municipal election, but I think it might have been another election. The minutes from this committee, we talked about the names being bolded and the lines on the ballots being thicker. So we have reviewed, we did bring up those minutes and make sure that the clerks have our recommendations from the last time we brought this up.
Okay, moving on. Recruiting new members.
All right, so we're always open to recruiting new members. So if you have anyone that you know who you think might be a good choice for the committee, we invite you to recruit them and get them to join. If you have any ideas of how we can recruit more members, if you want to see us do social media posts, if you want us to do a certain thing, if you could send those ideas to me, and I can get working on that so we can recruit some new members for the fall.
Good. Perfect.
Can I add to that before we move on? With the municipal election coming up, we will be electing a new committee. So our existing committee members that we have now will have to reapply to say that they want to be on the next cycle of AAC. So this is the perfect time to think about what you guys want to do. If you still want to be part of the committee, which we hope you do, but also if you know somebody else that would like to join, that would be good. The meeting cycles will be every other month as we have done. So the time commitment won't be like anything more than it has been.
Recommendations for International Day of Persons with Disabilities Day. Kaylee.
All right, so we're getting started on this one early. So International Day of Persons with Disabilities is December 3rd. And this year we're hoping to share some media recommendations. So if you have any books, movies, music, podcasts with people with disabilities, either starring or created that content, we want to be able to share them. So I'm looking for your recommendations. Anytime you have one, you can just shoot me an email with that recommendation so I can compile a list that we'll share on that day.
Okay. Item 8.8, Annual Accessibility Plan. Councilor Miller.
Can I go back to the last one, Drew?
Well, sure.
International disability. Or Kaylee, I don't understand. Like, I assume that they're Canadians.
They don't have to be Canadian.
Like if I look at, say, somebody like Tara Weber on, if you ever watch the Business News Network, BNN, she's one of their more popular hosts. How would you incorporate that? I guess, like, what are you looking for exactly? Still not quite clear.
If you read a book by a person with a disability and you're like, hey, this was a really good read, that's something we want to share on that day. Or here's a really good representation of someone with a disability in the media. So here's them starring on a TV show or, like you said, a news broadcast, in a movie. We want to highlight those things.
Okay,
so,
well,
like,
I'll give you. Okay, so I'll give you Tara Weber's name now. And like I say, she's on BNN and she does all the Western stuff, so resources. Okay, so I just want to clarify. Okay, Drew, yeah, annual accessibility plan. So my question through you then to Keely is that annual accessibility plan, is that something that we have to renew every year or no? Is there a requirement? Is there a provincial requirement?
Sheena's gonna.
Okay.
I didn't need to speak to it. I was just giving you a 5 year, every 5 years.
That you're giving me the high five. So you're saying that we have to have it updated every 5 years is what you're saying, I think is what Sheena's saying. Mm-hmm. So has it been updated since 2013? my question. Because if I go on the website, like the county website, I see the 2013 one. I don't see a 2018 one, unless I'm looking in the wrong spot.
Nope, the 2013 is when it was published. It would last for 5 years. The next version of it is in draft form and has been created. Keely's working on putting that together in more of a final version, and then that'll be reposted.
Now, will this committee see that draft version in June, or are we just, how's that? Like, what's the process?
So when we were looking to edit it, we did bring it to this committee for comment. I don't believe there was any, but yes, once it's finalized, it'll come back to this committee before it's final.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So I'll leave it at that then, and then we'll call, I guess, our 2022 or 2023 if we wait another few months.
Eight, 9, Burford Pharmacy, accessible parking.
Okay, yeah, and I brought this up to Kaylee because some residents, a couple residents, they're elderly, they had trouble getting into the pharmacy there in Burford. And if anybody's familiar with, it used to be the TD Bank in Burford, now it's the Burford Pharmacy. And the accessible parking is at the back, which made sense when they had an entrance at the back, and then they had a bank robbery, so they closed that off, but they left the accessible parking at the back. And somebody suggested, well, could we not move that accessible parking to the front? Now, to get it on the front, it has to be on municipal parking, right? So I'm just wondering if Keely, you had a chance to work on that or talk to the Burford Pharmacy at all, because they keep asking me. So I have nothing new to give them. So whatever you could share with the committee would be appreciated.
Yeah, so unfortunately, we entered another phase of close down with the pandemic. I believe we left it off that we were going to bring it up to the committee to get their opinions on what they think of whether the on-street parking spot would be the best option. I know on the side, it was kind of dicey as far as getting a parking spot on the side. And then I had some health issues in August and was not working for a little bit. So that's where it was kind of left. It was that we were going to bring it to committee and get their opinion on if they thought the on-street parking would be a good one. I know I also spoke about getting a spot at the front there. I know it's hard to describe without seeing it, but there's a big paved area in the front, and there was the possibility of getting a parking spot put there as opposed to on the actual street itself.
Okay, Keely, rather than ask that, I was going to say, oh, you guys, I was going to say for the next meeting, maybe we get some photos or something like that, but I see you guys. Okay, there. I'll let you proceed. Shut up.
No, don't shut up. I just pulled this up so we can look at it.
Yeah, so what we were looking at is possible where the blue car is already parked, making that an accessible spot, or the paved area on the side there beside to the left of the door was also an option.
Right.
So if we were to make it to the left, kind of where the bench and stuff is, that's a potential option. You would just have to drive up in front of the door was the only issue with that one, or making where that blue car is parked, making that an accessible spot were some options that we wanted to discuss with the committee.
I was going to ask, could we don't have what the Burford Pharmacy, what their thoughts on it are, have we? Do we have that?
No, we don't have that.
Because being a pharmacy, they do tend to get a lot of people that have, accessibility issues, right? And it would be nice if you can go back to that previous picture, just show the committee where I was speaking of the accessible parking is currently at the back of the building. It is a bit of a distance to the front of the building.
Right.
I'm just on Google, like, whoops.
Yeah. I
Maybe
gathered
that's why.
because it's I get it because it still says Canada Trust, and it's not Canada Trust.
So it would be the length of the building they would have to walk to get up to the entrance, correct?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's problematic during the winter too.
I personally, oh, Martin says, where's the blue car? Do you see it now from this image?
Yep.
Okay. I personally don't love right in front of the building, the parking, because then you have to watch for pedestrians and the pedestrians have to watch for moving traffic. That's
What yeah, okay, so you're talking in front of the building, but so you're not talking on street parking,
No.
you're talking actually in front of the building. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not referring to the on-street. If we were to make it this
My question is, would the on-street be better than what they got now? I think it will, but I was hoping I was hoping people from the committee would chime in on this one, give me their thoughts.
The other street's okay, but it becomes a convenient for other people. They don't want to be a minute. I'm going to park there because I want to be a minute.
Yeah, that's where we rely on Greg Bergeron from bylaw to do this. And to do on-street parking. I don't think that's a big issue. I think Public Works would help us out with that. Yes.
Yeah.
I think that we just need to send we don't have to necessarily make a motion at this time, but possibly a recommendation to, I don't know what the committees are anymore, but operations, possibly.
Can I make a suggestion? I don't know if you want a motion. Could we at least talk to Burford Pharmacy for the June meeting, Keely, and talk to? Yep. Could you just put this all together? Would you mind? Just a report for the next June meeting, and then we could look at it, read it, and say, yeah, that's good, or you know what I mean. And then at least everybody can at least on the committee can give it some thought. So
right.
That's all right.
Just wanted to add, Martin, he agrees, he likes the idea of the accessible parking on the street. He's had to walk from the back on occasion, and it is quite long.
Okay.
He also agrees that parking where the benches would cause a dangerous situation.
And one other question I would have is, could you make it, and I'm just wondering if this would confuse people, do you just leave it as accessible parking all the time, or do you just say it's only accessible during the business hours? But at the same time, then I think, well, maybe it confuses people, so maybe it's just, anyways, maybe you could address that, Keely, too. I don't know how that works out. I know for school zones, they have a certain speed limit during school hours, and then outside school hours, it's a little bit higher, but at the same time, I don't want to confuse anybody either.
If we were to make it actual accessible parking that we would enforce, we do have to put the pavement marking on the pavement. So that
and I would put a sign on the sidewalk.
Right.
I would post it on the sidewalk too, because in the winter you never see it.
Okay, fair enough.
So we're leaving this as Keely's going to talk to the pharmacy, get information from Public Works, and you're going to come back with more information in the next meeting?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. And then everybody on the committee can at least look at it and see it. And you have a good diagram, Keely, of the building and the one at the back.
I guess I'm up on the curbing on Cedar Street in downtown. I went past the Arlington. I was going to cross the road to get to Cobblestone, and I was on my manual wheelchair, or my power wheelchair. And as I went over the curb, I jammed into the road. I couldn't move because it's such a drop off. So I was stuck on the road. Somebody with me, so they pushed me away, and the other side just as bad. So that whole corner, all those corners downtown are not very wheelchair accessible. They're old sidewalks downtown, but even if they just did the corners, just made them more.
Can I just ask for clarification? So we're talking about downtown right now, right? Not
right now, yes.
Cedar Street. Okay.
No, the downtown. Cedar Street's where I live up, but downtown, right by the Arlington. And you go across the road. And the intersection by the bridge there, and both those curves are not really user-friendly. I've called Joe Murphy and Mark Eby, who work for the county. They're supposed to be looking after it. I don't know.
Okay.
Well,
And they're putting, well, where I'm living on Cedar, they just put new curbs in, putting exactly the same curbs in. And I talked to the roadworks, and he didn't understand why they put those curbs in. So somebody's messed up. So, because I can't get out of my driveway right now with my wheelchair.
Oh no.
well, the community improvement plan, streetscaping is supposed to be part of that plan, and doing something with the curbs, I believe, is recommended. So that committee, which is probably a larger committee than this, I'm not sure if they're working on it directly, but there was a thought, and it was included in concerns in the old plan. So the whole downtown Paris is a possible hazard for wheelchairs and other accessible items. So maybe they should be consulted or something as to what are you doing.
But when I called them, they had never heard of a complaint. They never realized. I guess they never realized until somebody draws it to their attention. They didn't realize.
Right.
Are we back on Cedar Street or are we back on downtown?
Well, no, we go back on Cedar Street. He's done the same thing, and I called him. They didn't even make any driveway exceptions. You know how you doing the concrete to make a room for the car to get. They didn't do that. He said they did the lazy man's curb. So I'm hoping that they can fix that, because it's all condos up there. So most of the people living up there are all elderly or have walking disabilities.
I don't want to cut anybody off, but we need to keep this as two separate conversations. So if we're sending a recommendation to look further into Cedar Street, we need to keep that separate from the downtown community.
Okay, sorry.
Because they're two different worlds and two different groups working on it.
Oh, okay. So I've contacted these two guys who work for the county, and they're supposed to be looking at it. So I don't know where they make. We're going to contact them again. Well, see how he's made out with that. If they made any decisions.
Drew, would you be willing to do an on-site visit with either Joe or Mark?
That's what I'm waiting for. He wants me to go downtown and show him it's difficult, but because of the weather, we haven't really had good weather to go down there. Okay. Yeah, that's what he wants to do.
Who, Joe or Mark?
I'm not sure which one, but either or. We've talked about both of them.
If it's okay with the committee, can I work on this? Maybe I can be part of that on site if that's all right.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for him to call me back when he's available. And he does want to see the downtown especially. Okay,
tell you what, if it's okay with the committee, then I will contact Drew. You and I will talk after, and I'm going to see which one of these gentlemen or who they want to send, and we'll report back to the committee for June. Is that fair?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, leave with me if that's okay, because I don't like it when you contact them and you don't hear back, and you know they should say, well, blah blah blah. So okay, leave it with me, and
I'm just gonna stick up for them. They have been emailing back with Julie, Drew's wife.
Right.
There has been response in regards to Cedar Street. I do know that the downtown intersection will be part of the grander plan.
okay, but even then, it's still not a bad idea. Just and I appreciate that information there, but it's still not a bad idea for them to see the issues maybe that Drew's having, right? And because sometimes you know, yeah, seeing it and hearing it are two different things. So okay, we will we'll have something back for the June meeting.
Okay. Site plan control applications. I don't know who's looking after that.
I will gladly speak to it for them. We did skip one.
Yes, we did.
We skipped 8:11.
Oh, sorry.
This is in regards to the community improvement plan, but not specifically just downtown Paris. Some of you have been on the committee for a long period of time might remember when the CIP committee came out, and we had Lyle and Sarah Stasia as representatives from the AAC.
Right.
Unfortunately, Lyle's no longer a member, and Sarah sadly passed away. So do we want to appoint somebody from AAC as a representative to be part of this committee so that we have somebody? I know that currently applications that are coming in are by email. So I don't actually think that the committee's like getting together regularly. The email that I got says, as a representative from AAC, you would be reviewing applications for the Paris area for the financial incentive program and providing a recommendation to council. Funding is provided to property owners or tenants for items such as facade, signage, apartment improvements, property and parking improvements. The committee will schedule to meet monthly upon reconvening, but currently they're just doing email applications. They will only meet when applications are submitted. The term of this appointment would end with the term of council. So if we were to appoint somebody now, we would need to reappoint somebody when we get a new committee.
Right. Right.
So basically want to know, like, do we want to appoint somebody now or do we want to wait on this? That's your
I think
call.
we should wait.
Yeah, I think we should.
Sorry.
Nope.
I'm thinking we should wait.
Okay. Any other suggestions? I don't disagree.
I'm not quite sure what we're deciding upon here.
If we want to appoint someone to be part of the CIP committee right now, or wait until our new term of committee.
Well, is there a volunteer?
Yeah, that was the question.
Sorry, Shane, did you say which community improvement plan? Is it all of them or just Paris, or is it St. George, or is it Burford? Because now we got 3 going.
Well,
The community improvement plan?
Nancy said the Paris. It would be for Paris. As a representative from AAC, you'd be reviewing applications for Paris.
Okay. Yeah, because like I say, we do have them for St. George and Burford now.
And I believe those aren't those ones like outside of, they're not really run by staff, those committees.
No, they're.
They're kind of part of it.
I don't know who runs those ones, but I know that I've gotten stuff for like St. George, the is it a massage clinic or something, and they needed some suggestions on parking, and they needed us to paint a walkway for them, and we did that. Like paint the no, don't park in front of the pathway lines.
Yeah, no, those CRPs they're the exact same as the others. They're run by the county, same thing.
So is there a committee for those?
I don't know if there's a committee.
I don't, is it part of the community improvement plan?
Yeah, they're called community improvement plans. Yeah.
Yeah, they're just separate. I just don't know how those
Okay.
come in.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it's just staff members on those, and then they look at them. I know they all come.
No,
to
there still
council.
is. There still is. They approve the prizes or awards for renovating or building downtown. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, are you talking to BIA though?
That's, I think he's talking.
No. Who spearheads that? David somebody, I think. Can't think of his name.
Can we just,
What doesn't Nancy Davis know?
I'm reading the email from Nancy that specifically says the representative from AAC would be reviewing applications for Paris.
Yeah.
So we can get, you know what, we could just say we're not going to appoint somebody right now, and we could bring more information back in June, and then
Yeah, that sounds good.
cycle.
Ask her what town she's talking to, or if she wants to include the other.
Okay.
From central office, Allison would know something about this stuff.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have that information, unfortunately. I've just started 3 weeks ago, so all I have is what Nancy told me, unfortunately.
Briar, I think he meant Allison as in Allison Newton.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah, okay. Well, then never mind.
We'll bring more information back, but as much as Nancy's told us is to review applications in Paris. But we can find out how we get the other ones as well.
Alrighty. We're all good with that, the improvement? All good? 9, site plan control applications.
So they didn't have anything to send to us for this meeting. Everything is kind of in like a stage 2 or like not at a comment phase, but when they get a full roster of staff again, there will be a member from planning joining on these meetings. But there's nothing to review right now.
Okay, thank you. Number 10, staff reports.
We don't have anything officially, but I will let everybody know that Keely's going to be the staff liaison and lead for this committee
Okay.
going forward.
Okay.
Of course, everybody can email me and talk to me, but then I'll say, you got to touch base with Keely. I'll still talk to you, of course.
Okay, thank you. 11.1, Newfoundland and Labrador passes new accessibility legislation. Who is?
This was just included as communication, as an FYI, for you guys to read. Other provinces are getting accessibility legislation because it was, wasn't it Ontario, and it was like Manitoba and then BC, so now it's going out east as well. So this was just to accept as information.
Okay. 1-2, Brett Sports Complex, accessible parking. We've been complaining about this for since it was built.
Okay, I gotta share my screen again. So we included the communication from Lorna, which is Lyle's wife, but some past committee members might remember that this had come up in the past, that the accessible parking spaces at the BSC, we don't like them because they're raised. So if you pull in and you were to do a rear load, you're like rear loading onto an uneven surface, and you can't back into the space and rear load onto the sidewalk because they have the bollards there with the signage on them. So at that time, what was said was with BSC expansion, that parking lot will be repaved, so we will remove those parking spaces at that time. That was the conversation we had then. That project is roughly 2 years away. So it's suggested that possibly we put in a temporary accessible parking spot. So what I communicated to Lorna, like I told her, like, yes, we know that this is an issue. I expressed that it would be done, but I also suggested that I would bring it to this committee so we could make a suggestion to put in the temporary locations. So on the screen, if you guys can all see this, circles is the existing locations. The arrows is the entrance, and then Matt, the supervisor at BSC, he proposed the stars as possible temporary locations.
I did a long way away.
So if we look at, I don't like to use north and south because I don't know those directions. But if we're looking at the left side of the screen, the star there, he put it, it's basically the same distance away from the accessible parking now. And the reason it's there instead of at the top of the screen is because there's the hash marks already there as the access aisle. As would be the same as on the other side of the screen where it's located.
Right.
And then you see the star by the, that's kind of on the building. There's like a pull in there, like where buses kind of park and unload, but there's no curb cut. So you would still have to walk all the way, like you'd either have to unload onto the sidewalk if you can, or you would have to like walk out basically into the driveway and then go to where the curb cut is, where that arrow is at the top. So I suggest the two stars in the parking lot by the hash marks, because that allows for an access aisle and the extra space. Because keep in mind, we're not repainting the parking lot to create these temporary locations. They're just an additional parking spot that would be deemed accessible. So we would like the committee's recommendation.
And this is just for 2 years, you think, until the other ones are redone? Is that what you said?
Yeah, this would be when they resurface the parking lot and all that construction happens, so we can take out the raised spots that we don't like.
So are these 2 spots additional?
Yeah.
The 3 would still be there if someone can still, like someone, yeah, okay.
Yeah, the 3 in the circle on each side would stay, and then we would add like one of those star locations on each side.
Because not everyone who uses accessible parking has a wheelchair or a scooter or whatever. Like
Right.
my daughter uses those, and she would be able to use the ones that are there now. But I understand. So it would be nice if they stayed and the others were there as well.
Yes, it would be in addition to those.
Yes. Okay.
It seems to me it would address what Lauren was saying in her emails. I think their issues.
Right.
I used to have a rear load. I rear loaded my scooter on a high race, and you couldn't. It wouldn't touch down at the bottom. Like there was a big step after you put the ramp down.
Right.
And
So-
even now, I've got a side load now. It's still going to be a problem on that one, the side load, because it's going to go down into the crack.
There's no crack there.
Or I mean, it's just doesn't work.
Okay, so we need to make a recommendation. Or I guess, yeah. Briar, is it a recommendation or a motion that we want to add the temporary spots?
Do the motion.
Okay, so we would like to make a motion that we add the temporary location on each side of the building by the hash, like by the existing access aisle. Does everybody agree with that?
Yes.
Yep.
Need somebody
Yep.
to make the motion and then second the motion.
Yeah, I agree with it, but I don't think it's very age friendly in its outlook. But that's okay.
What is the problem with it?
Well, basically someone made a mistake when they did the original planning, and I don't know if the sites were any better at that particular time, but it's just another example of people with disabilities having a hard time doing things because things aren't right in the first place. So all I'm talking about is thinking about the right way it should be, and include that in our decisions. So
Well,
just a comment.
okay, and we know that there was a lapse in judgment, possibly when this was designed. We may not have had this committee at the time. And we know it needs to be addressed, so we want to address it now instead of waiting an additional 2 years to help
Right.
the situation.
But okay.
Still doesn't make it any more age friendly.
But okay, getting back to what Jim said though, Jim, maybe when it is redone in 2 years, maybe we could have a little bit of input into it then, right? That would be the time to, if there's things we could fix, that's all.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And when these do go to public consult, we need to comment.
Right. Well, we also have our designation as an age-friendly community. So I'm just playing devil's advocate here. So
No, but I think that's great. I think you should be playing the devil in about a year and a half or a year's time.
Yeah.
And then when the plans come forward, maybe we could kick this around a little.
I remember when they built the arena, we had a say as to all the accessibility side in the arena, but nobody talked about the outside of the arena.
right.
And then when they built those parking spots, we were like, what the heck's going on here?
Right. Well, that's all the same as the downtown core, and it's a makeover. The age-friendly stuff has to be addressed, and I'm not sure if there's a coordinated way of doing it.
Being on the committee, volunteer, be part of the CIP.
There you go.
Okay.
Okay, so we need to make a motion. We need
I'll make a motion.
and then we need a seconder for this.
I'll second that.
I'll make the motion, Drew. You're the chair, so.
Perfect. Do you have what you need from us, Briar, with the motions and seconds?
Yep, if we could just vote on it and like all in favor sort of thing. Show of hands, please.
Can you see everybody, Brian?
I can't see, I see Sheena's thing.
Oh, sorry.
I can see you guys.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, show of hands, please. Ready, good stuff. All right, that carries.
I saw Jim Harder's fingers.
Martin put up a virtual hand.
Thank you.
All right. So I will write back to Lorna and let her know what the committee decided, or that we put that forward, and then the minutes will go to the next committee, but we'll also let Matt know, so that gets done. And we can move on.
Other business. No other business? Okay. Next meeting is June 11th, June 13th at 1 p.m.
Do we know? Maybe we don't know, I guess. Is that going to be electronic, or do we think it might be in person?
I think it's going to be in person.
Good.
If it's in person, maybe we could do a little barbecue or lunch or something to that effect. Just a thought, because we used to. Because I don't think we're meeting probably in July and August, right? We won't meet in the summer.
I don't. Okay. I don't mind that idea. Keely's the boss now, so let.
Keely, can we leave that with you? You can get some ideas from Sheena, because she's been to a few of them, but it's a nice tradition. So, and I think I'd like to see it come back. That's all.
We typically did that after summer as like a welcome back, but that'll probably be in and around the time of new committee. So I think that June is a great time to do it as a welcome back. Thanks for bearing with the pandemic.
Right.
And happy to see all your faces. I think that's a great idea.
Right.